I have a very good friend who told me, you need to put cats in your presentation. Yeah? She said, every time I put a cat in a presentation, I knew that I was going to get a better, I started to get better scores. So I started putting cats in. She owns a dog, but she puts cats in. So I'm going to start a new movement. We're here to learn at these conferences. We got a new hashtag. It's called Content Not Cats. Okay? Now, the goal for this talk, and it's not to be popular because I'm not going to put lots of pictures of cats in it, is to get you guys aware and value some new things. Yeah? And so to do that, rather than me have the opinion at the end that you've all learnt something, because I'm sure you will, or my boss, Kathleen, rather than her deciding, we're going to have a little vote. So when I ask you, have you become aware of something new? Put the red card up. Or have you started to value something new? Put the green card up. So there's about 20 people in the audience. In fact, there are 20 people in the audience with these cards. So can you just hold them up for a second? Everyone else can say that they've learned something or are aware of something, mainly because it will make me feel better, okay? But that's the goal here. Right. That's the kind of organization we want to work in. Does anyone work in an organization like this? Please put your, yeah. Everybody hates that person at the back. They get to do this. Yeah, this is the organization we want to work in. We want everyone working together to achieve our goals. We all want to collaborate. And I've been fortunate to work in some organizations that are closer to this and some that are very, very far away. And it's really down to the culture. And the thing about the culture, it's a bit like American comics. So can anyone tell the difference between these two comics? Yeah? These are two comic books. Can you tell the difference? You look at them and you go, they're almost identical. And that's what culture's often like. So the answer is, that one's worth $1.1 million, and that one's worth just under $5,000, and the reason is the condition. But it's only when you put them next to each other like this, and we study them more closely, we can actually see the difference. And the thing with culture as well is that when you join a culture to begin with, whenever you join a new team or a new company, you kind of stand out a bit, and everything starts to jar a little bit, and you think, oh, we didn't do it that way, we do it that way. But if you're going to fit in and if you're going to survive emotionally in that team or in that company, over time you stop seeing it, yeah? Which makes it really hard to see these differences in culture. Now, I was very fortunate because I worked for two companies where there was a similar scenario. There was a smaller company and a much larger company. The smaller company was kind of agile and did all the good stuff, and it was fun to be in, and people were supportive, and it was more like people trying to get that pyramid. But they were also part of a larger traditional organization. And what I saw is, in one case, the culture, even though the executives in the larger organization had bought the smaller company to do this, I saw the culture destroy the smaller company's culture. Yeah? And so there are a number of things that I observed in the culture. Because it had happened, and it was basically, I worked for a smaller company where a big company came in and they destroyed the culture of the small company. I then went to another big company where they'd got a design lab, and I saw the big contrast in the culture. Because I saw them both together, it was really obvious some of the behaviors that you see in this kind of culture that's trying to build the pyramid and the one where people are just out for themselves. So what were those things? So one of the really obvious things is that in these cultures that we want, the managers sit with the teams. Yeah, you can't tell the manager, apart from the fact that, I think as Chris said earlier, sometimes they've had a shower because they're more responsible. They sit with the team. The managers and the people directing the work are sitting with the team. They're in the work. They're trying to help the teams. In the other cultures, what we see is that the managers have an office. Yeah? And one of the companies I work with, they started off with none of the managers had got an office. And then after 2 years, all of the managers, all the senior managers had their own office. They took all the office spaces and meeting rooms and converted them into offices. And we had a CEO who had an office in the London office, and there was a PA stationed outside that office at all times. You were not allowed to go in his office. even though he only visited it for 1 week in a 2-year period. Yeah? So these offices become important. So that's one way you can see it. This is another one. In these kind of agile cultures, we see a deference to experience. With the way people introduce people, they're like, oh, this guy's great, you should see what he can do with Java or some other modern language that's more modern, like, I don't know, small talk. Whereas over here, what we see is, oh, this guy's a VP. Yeah, has anyone had that introduction? He's a VP. If you need to speak to people in that department, come to me and I'll speak to my boss and he'll introduce us. Yeah? That's another thing we saw. Another thing. These guys love small, fast teams. Yeah, let's really make it happen. Let's focus on the customer, do stuff. These guys love massive teams. They're slow, they're lumberous, but the most important thing is they're big. One of the things I love about this community is this. People go, help, help. You know, I need help, and then it's great to see the response where people kind of support them and help them do stuff. But over here, people never need help. And as a coach, it always surprises me that a company pays money for me to go in and to help the people in their organization learn because of my experience or the things I've been involved in for longer than them. And yet, it's kind of almost like I'm the plague. As I walk into a room, people scatter. Oh my God, it's the coach. I might learn something, run away. And this is where it really gets down to it. This is the big difference. This is the heart of the beast now. Because in an agile kind of culture, when we talking about startups, if we're talking about DevOps and all these cool things that we think of, the key thing is that the outcomes are emergent. Yeah? It's about, okay, we want to increase the number of customers that we've got. We want to increase our revenue. We want to, get more through the journey. And it's all about what are the outcomes that are there and that we're measuring them. Over here, what you find is we've got to implement this version of the software. We've got to build this feature. We've got to do this thing. And all the outcomes are knowable. Yeah? And part of this is because over here, we love resolving that uncertainty through testing and through hypothesis testing in particular. Whereas here, we're resolving uncertainty by speaking to our experts. Yeah? So I've gone through 2 companies. I'm on company number 5 or 6 now. And this pattern keeps emerging. It's really frustrating. And so I keep gnawing at this thread of trying to understand the culture. And I discovered something called Hofstadter's cultural index theory. And this is a guy in I think it's the 1960s. Have you noticed that everything cool was invented in the 1960s? I don't think Hofstadter had been born in the 1960s, but I think it's better if I said it was done in the 60s. And what they did is at IBM, which was a massive multinational, they'd got all offices in every country around the world, so they could hold constant for the company culture. And they measured the culture of each company in the different offices. And they came up with all of these different things. So there was the power distance index, the individualism versus collectivism, uncertainty avoidance, masculinity versus femininity, long-term orientation versus short-term, and indulgence versus restraint. And as I was looking at these behaviors, this list of behaviors I'd observed in the kind of the agile-y, kind of modern, innovative cultures and the kind of more traditional cultures, what I found was that there were 2 in particular that were really key that I noticed. And that was the power distance index and the uncertainty avoidance. So power distance index is how far away are you from your boss? Yeah? So if you're in an organization where you need to book a meeting to speak to your boss in order to speak to his boss, you're a very long way from the top. But if you're in an organization where, the coffee machine is next to the CEO's desk, and if you feel like chatting to the CEO, you can get a coffee, then you've got a very low power distance index. So that's the first one. The second one is the uncertainty avoidance. Yeah, people who want certainty versus people who are happy with a much higher degree of uncertainty. And what you see is in these patterns is that this higher power distance index feeds the uncertainty avoidance, which feeds the higher power distance index. So the conversations you would see is, Ooh, yeah, well, we've noticed that some of our users are churning off. Now, if you're in a low power distance index organization, what would happen is that the boss would say, yeah, wow, it is. What should we do? I don't know. Let's go and speak to some customers, get some ideas. We'll run some experiments and we'll go forward. Great. And as the CEO, I just want to know, let me know what you need to do that. In the traditional organizations where that power distance index is very high, they'll go, ooh, customers are churning off. What do you think we should do? I don't know. What do you reckon? Should we build that feature? Yeah, I think we should build that feature. In fact, why don't we build that feature? If we build that feature, is that going to solve the problem? Because, like, you are the CEO. You're so far above me. You are like God. Does it solve the problem? And the CEO goes, yes. Great. We have now taken a problem involving uncertainty and made it a certain problem. And what we have effectively done is we have entered into the church of the hippo. And from there, all bad things happen in terms of your culture, because all of a sudden, people know things that they can't possibly know, and they're making decisions that should be things that are tested, and it's all about that. So, I'd just like to do a quick check to see how we're doing. Has anyone aware of anything they weren't aware of before, or value anything they didn't value before? Can we just do a quick check? Okay, so we've got Chris is counting because he's good at maths, so make sure once you've counted the numbers. Yep, good. We can carry on then. Okay, so that was all a preamble, because what I really wanted to paint was a picture of what is these cultural problems that we have in organizations. So now we're going to look at why are the business cases so bad. So, I know this is going to be really unpopular for some people, and I can understand that, but go with it. What I like to do is in pairs, just say hello to someone, either someone you know, someone you don't, just someone near to you, and just, why do companies use business cases? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to ponder that question. So off you go. Speak to the person next to you. Why do companies use business cases? Off you go. So do I have a brave soul? Is there any brave souls in the room who'd like to perhaps share their thoughts? Anyone?
Thank you. So it gives you a nice opportunity to make a box where your manager can put a nice, how do you call it, signature on top of it and say, oh yeah, this is approved, this is good. So it creates it into a binary problem. So either it is perfect or it is not, and as soon as the signature is on it, it must be perfect because your manager said it is. So it's risk avoidance.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone who's desperate to talk now at the moment? You might not, yeah, see, there's one. You might not get the chance later, so that might be a very good decision.
I guess the third scenario is that business cases are made because it's just tradition. They have to be made. Not thinking why, but they have to be there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all. And can we just have a little round of applause for everyone for speaking, because it's a big group. So thank you for those. This is it, isn't it? It's like what the business is trying to work out is, so what's the benefit? Yeah? So we're going to make this much money. And then what's the cost? And as long as this number is big, this number here, if that's a big number and it's bigger than that number, this is a good thing to do. Yeah? That's kind of what they're trying to say. That's what a business case says. So, so how do we estimate cost? Yeah? Anyone got any ideas? How do we estimate cost? Pardon? Time versus cost. Yeah, how long will it take? Any other? Pattern matching, we could look at previous kind of similar projects. Yeah, one more and then we'll move on. Yeah, function points. Yeah, and I know that I'd arrived home back at one of those agile meetings if someone had said, story points. Story points, lots of them. What I want to share with you is, who's aware of Todd Little and Troy McGinnis? Yeah, these are two names you want to take away from this room. They've written some brilliant material. Absolutely brilliant. And a lot of the way I do cost estimation is based on their work. What Todd did is he did an experiment where he captured actuals and estimates over a period of time, a large number of projects. And what he discovered was that, in actual fact, the actual versus estimate follows a log normal distribution. In 50% of the cases, your estimate's out by a factor of 2. And in 10% of the cases, it's out by a factor of 4. So the reality is we can do our estimates, and we're actually pretty good. And are there any project managers in the room? Because you might recognize this. So as a project manager, I remember my first day as a project manager, I'd got a mentor, and he took me to one side, and he goes, right, we're going to go into a quiet room now. I said, what are we going to talk about? He goes, this is all you need to be a project manager. I said, what's that? He said, whatever number they give you, you double it before you give it to management. And you know what? That is spot on, because if you actually integrate under that curve, you come up with a number of 2.1. So there's a little bit of error, but not bad. But we're pretty good at cost, aren't we? Yeah. And in fact, we're so good at cost that we beat people up when they get it wrong. Yeah. How do we estimate benefits? Yeah. So I'm going to give you another couple of minutes. Say hello to your friend again, or you can choose a new friend. How do you estimate benefits? Yeah. So you're all working for companies. You're all working on projects. Think about how your project's done it. How did we work that? And if it doesn't involve chicken lizards and kind of rune stones, you're probably not telling the truth. Off you go. 2 minutes. How do you estimate benefits? Any brave souls? We've got a microphone going around, so someone at the front, you're going to share? Can we get the microphone?
One moment, I'm doing my best Oprah. Thanks.
So we were discussing this, and we don't see a way to do this properly. There are so many second and third order effects to anything you do that it's actually sort of impossible.
It's impossible. So it's one of those massive uncertainty problems, but we need to convert it to a certainty problem, don't we? Yeah. Anyone else want to share? Ah, there we.
So from my experience, there's it's partly what the other person already said. Like you have a prediction of a hard number that you can actually work with and you can count with. But then there's also things like creating goodwill with the customer, like showing that you want to approach him and understand his problem. And there's also the benefit of doing experiments with whatever you're building, even if there's a factor of uncertainty in there. So yeah, it's a number of different things, but it's a lot based on prediction and guessing. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Anyone? This could be your last chance to talk. Oh, there. I've got to talk. I don't care what it's about, but I'm going to talk.
Keep your hand up.
I can't listen to this guy for an entire hour without getting a chance to answer back.
Let's pass it now.
I expect that benefit usually equal cost plus a little bit more, depend on management ambition.
Right, that's it.
We have one person who's dying to talk.
Go on.
I want to propose a slightly different perspective. It's more like I don't just want to look at costs and what the profit is going to be out there, but since you also have a lean background, I think you really have to look at the voice of customer and what value are you delivering to your customer. I think that should be driving, and then you can see that what's the secondary.
I'm going to completely disagree with you, but maybe because I'm going to say that later. Okay, thanks. So let's be honest about how do you really, and let's think about those two cultures. You nailed it. It's a really uncertain thing here. We have no way of really knowing what the benefit is, but that's uncertainty. We hate uncertainty, so we want certainty. So what we want is we want someone to take away that uncertainty for us. And so who does it? Zoolander. This doesn't do it justice. So what I really meant was Zoolander. So I would like to introduce you now a consultant who goes, oh, so you've got an uncertain problem that there's no solution for. I can solve that problem for you. A number of organizations I've worked with, what they do is they bring in very expensive, very pretty consultants who basically come in and they'll go, right, this is really difficult, so I'm going to do it in an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm going to create a model which will fool you into thinking that this problem that is massively uncertain and we can't solve, I have solved. And they use the Zoolander effect. So it's not even as if management will actually say, hey, yeah, that's the right thing. What they'll often do is they'll bring in Zoolander to actually create your business model. And then it's great because no one understands it apart from the consultant. So I'm going to come to this because this is one of the big issues that we have. So why is it that money is such a bad measure of success? Has anyone got any thoughts on that? We won't do the 2-minute thing because it's quite warm in here. So why is money a really bad measure of success? Do you want to?
Make me.
Do you want to? Sorry about this.
That's all right. I needed a bit of fitness today. I missed out on yoga. It's all right.
Sorry.
Go.
Yeah, so how I know it works in my company is that money is a bad thing because they look at short-term effects. So they look at the money they'll save like next month, and that will not say anything about the results in a couple of years.
So that's one thing. Anyone else? Any UX or designy people here? There's one at the back. There's someone very, very sneaky went, huh, I'm doing it. No, I'm not.
Well, because you're looking at business cases, you're not looking at future business cases. So what is the effect on the cost of future business cases? And might be a benefit now, but future ones might be more expensive because you did it a certain way.
Yep. Okay. So when I do this training for product owners and stuff, we talk about this and they go, right, we've got to have feedback. So as I was saying, the only way you can really do things in the modern world is you try it out, see, are we satisfying the needs of the customers? And the big problem that you have with money, which is the way that most people think about their business cases, is one, it's normally a long while in coming. Yeah? So even if you can get your product into the market, you won't see the impact financially for quite some time, which means you can't get feedback. So if you're only looking at money, it's far too long and you get an unstable thing where people are just guessing, which leads to hippos. The other thing is that when you do money, there are so many things that are going on in an organization that affect that money number and the money coming in, that actually you've got no way of knowing what thing you've done in your organization has actually created the money. Yeah? So they are two really big problems. Now, let's not forget, most business cases are written in those terms. Yeah? So what happens in our business case is that because money is a real problem and we can't predict it, success equals features. Yeah? Has anyone seen a business case where it's like success is features? We're going to make £5 million if we just build that feature. So if we build that feature, we're okay. Has anyone seen that business case? Yeah. And so what does that mean again? Who decides which feature? So is it the person speaking to the customers? Yeah? Are the customer service people making the decision? Is it the UX people? No. It's the highest paid person's opinion. So it's the person with the least situational awareness of the problem that decides which features are needed in our success. Because people will come in and they'll be arguing, we need to build a purple widget, we need to build a red widget, and they'll sit there and go, yes, well, I'm an expert in our customers, even though I've only been with the company for 10 minutes, and I think we build the purple widget. Yeah? And guess where we are? We're back here. So, content not cats. We're going to do a little vote again. Is anyone aware of something or value something that they weren't aware of? You can all put your hands up, but I just want Chris to count the people with the cards. Yeah, and if you do it quickly, you can fan everyone in the room. We got any? When Chris is counted, he will let me move on. Yep, good. Great, we'll move on. Okay, so here's the question. What is the alternative? So what is the alternative to this business case where we dream up a value for come up with a business case where we dream up value, we dream up the amount of money and the benefits we're going to make, and then as a result we decide what the features are. So I'm going to give you your 2 minutes again. What is the alternative to the business case? Go. Okay, everybody. We've now got Chris is going to run around with the microphone. So, do we have anyone with an alternative? That was a very confident. Me, I'm Spartacus, and so is my sister.
You can set goals to change what you can measure.
Cool. You've been cheating, haven't you? You just looked at the next slide. You don't get to count on that. Anyone else got an alternative? What can we do that's different? Share the failures that you have as a team. Failures. Values. All right.
You have to say it in the microphone.
It's my set of values that you share the failures, but sorry.
That's also a good idea. But
share your values. Excellent. Anyone else? Oh, there's one at the back. Yeah. I like the fact that Chris is like, you know what? Everyone's going to be watching at home, going, why is it taking so long? But I don't care because it is so hot in this room.
Okay. What we've set up as a sort of preliminary phase, where normally business cases would dream up this ideal world, we have a process where you can have an explore phase, and you get a small envelope of funding, and then at the very least, you need to have validated learning after that phase, and then it's decided what can the KPIs and the measurements be, and if there is value to have larger funding to go on.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you. There was one over there, Chris. No sitting
I
down yet.
I have a mic. It's fine.
Yeah,
I
bought my own. I had a mic at home. Whenever I go to a conference, I take the mic along just in case.
Yeah, you beat me to that one. But so basically, I was saying to my conversational partner here, just have trust in the team. So basically not top down, where decisions get made by business cases being pushed up and then someone's signing off, but basically giving the team the trust and go like, here's your budget for the year. Your PO knows exactly what the customer wants. Your UX designer knows exactly what kind of problems there are in your designs and all that kind of stuff. Your developers know what kind of tech debt you have. But basically, if you don't trust the team and give them sort of almost complete autonomy, it's very hard to get that value pushed back up and then prove it to someone else who doesn't have that fine-grained knowledge of the product, of the UX, of whatever, what this team is working on, like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, hopefully, maybe a little bit more.
Cool, thank you. That's good. So I'm going to give you my answer now, and it's kind of an unpopular one. But to me, this is something that we as a community tend to kind of like resist because they're so horrible and they're done to us. But I think it's something we need to embrace. It's to your points there. But the difference in the way I think about metrics is that the metrics facilitate a conversation. Yeah, it's not a case of the metrics are coming down like this or they're going up like that. It's a case of the metrics enable the executives who've got a very wide contextual view of what's going on across the organization, and the teams who've got a much more localized view of what's going on, and the metrics allow them to actually communicate with each other. So the kind of metrics that I've seen that, you know, I think most of you have experienced before are number of customers, amount of activity, and revenue is one of those. But what we're not doing is this slavish, all of our business cases are written in this one currency, which is dollars or euros or pounds or something, but they're doing. And the great thing about these is we can break them down as well. So to facilitate that conversation, the executives might say, you know what, at our level, we've got number of customers, amount of activity using our product, and then amount of revenue. And then you can break that down and go, well, in terms of the number of customers, let's look at number of new customers and the number of customers who leave, the churn. And you might say, well, look, this is great. We've got 1.1 million customers. But then when you look at it, you go, yeah, well, and we've made 100,000 in the last month, you know, extra customers based on last month. But when you look at it, you find you've got 600,000 new customers, but you've got 500,000 customers churning off. You can start to have these conversations about, well, should we really be trying to get more customers when our existing customers are leaving us? Let's fix that problem. And then when we're looking at new customers, we can kind of like go, do we need more customers into the funnel? Do we need to improve the conversion rate of people who have come into the funnel to kind of being signed up? But it facilitates a conversation. Not only that, you can start to do analytics. Now, with metrics, the thing I see people mistake is that there are value metrics, which is, you know, if we get more people into the funnel, we'll get new customers, we'll get number of customers. And then there are analytic metrics. Yeah, so there are metrics, things that we measure that might give us insight, but they're not always the great thing. So I'm going to give you an example there, which is a friend of mine at a company, he said, look at this. And what they'd done is, because he knew his metric was the number of people who say, I want to buy your product, it was a freemium kind of product, the number of customers who said, I want to buy, versus the number of people who actually gave the credit card and got to the end of the details. He said, look at this. And he said, we've broken down that conversion funnel, and what we've identified is that this page is really bad in the process, and we've charted the conversion on that page going from that page to the next one along versus the page load times. And we've seen a graph that goes, we get really good conversion, and then after 3 seconds it falls off the cliff. Yeah. So he's used the analytic metric to understand, and so then he could go to the management and say, right, I want to reduce this metric, but I'm only going to reduce it to 2.5 seconds, because below that we can see no value. And this is an IT kind of feature-based product. Their solution was, they looked at it and they said, the people most affected are the ones in Australia and New Zealand. They're where they're getting the most drop-off. So the whole thing was, he just installed a new server in Singapore, and it made an extra 20 million of revenue for the company. Yeah? But the key thing is that there's this top-down and bottom-up conversation where the top are saying, we want more new customers, and the guys at the bottom are saying, and here's how we can see some ideas that we can do that. And they're facilitating that conversation between them using the metrics. And there's no expectation that anyone can know what the result is. So here's a question for you. What's your metric? So you're all working on a project, I'm guessing. Some of you are sitting there going, ha, I don't work in IT, I'm okay. So if you're in HR, I ask this, what is your metric? You know, is it reducing the number of employees leaving? Just take a minute just to say hello to your neighbor again and just say, what is your metric? What metric are you using at the moment? Yeah? Yeah? And if you're not using a metric at the moment, an interesting question is, what should your metric be? So I'm looking for a really brave volunteer here, because I want someone to stand up and say, our current metric is, but it should be this. Anyone brave enough to do that? Oh, a couple of brave souls. Our current metric is revenue, and it should be the reduction of technical debt, so our customers stop complaining. I just killed the two.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Our current metric is velocity, like the amount of user story points per sprint. And I think it should be happiness, or how satisfied people are in their job. And it's because I visited a lecture before here, human factors as well, and that the performance goes up if people are unable to be themselves.
Yeah, cool. By the way, if you need me as an agile coach, I can teach you how to make sure your velocity improves sprint on sprint relentlessly forever. You have this little factor, I call it the 1.1 factor, and every time you calculate your points, you multiply it by 1.1, and then the next time it's 1.1 times 1.1, and it's amazing, it works every time. All of my teams are successful. And happy to.
Our current metric is amount of closed user stories, not a velocity, but just the amount of closed user stories. And it should be, I expect, amount of new customers, real customers, or maybe if it's a new product, amount of asking about product, and then new customers.
Yeah, cool. What, we got one. Cool. One. I'm hoping I'm going to finish early because I think everyone in the room will melt anyway.
Where were they?
We've got one here.
This guy.
Thank you. Hello. Our current metric is amount of monthly active users, which is not that bad, I think, taking into account what I hear. But I think it should be something less global, which could be more easy tracked back to the particular team which works on the features.
Yeah, so it's kind of something for a big group of people. It could be new customers versus churn or something. Yeah. Okay, cool. When I say cool, I really don't mean cool. I've been in a conversation that was like this, and this is one of those things why people don't like metrics as well. We had this thing, and it was like, okay, so what do we want to go for? Do we want to go for 15 million new customers in Vietnam, or do we want to go 2 million extra revenue in the United States? Yeah. So you're putting together your business case, and you're trying to work out what's the value. Who can answer that question? There's only one group of people that can really answer that question, isn't it? Because what is that? The answer to that question is what? It is pure, utter strategy. Yeah? It is entirely dependent on the context of your organization. If you're really struggling for money, if you're kind of like, oh my God, we're about to go bankrupt, well, obviously it's the bottom one. But if you're looking at a more strategic play, and perhaps you're thinking of your future markets, it's the top one. And there is no way anyone really, other than the CEO and the kind of the board level individuals who are specifying the direction of the organization, can make that decision. Yeah? And there's something really horrible about this decision as well, because what it says is that it's really hard to convert these metrics into a single currency. Yeah, think about that. So we cannot say that there's a static conversion rate where we say, if we can get an extra new customer, that's what it's worth, versus if we get extra revenue, that's what it's worth. It's just, there's not a static value. It's an exchange rate, like currency exchange rates, which are fluctuating all the while. The setting of that exchange rate is a CEO responsibility, and it's changing constantly. Yeah? Which means it's really hard to use things like cost of delay as a tool, because when you do cost of delay, when we're coming up with our values, when we're coming up to things we want, we go, right, 15 million customers in Vietnam, how much is that worth? Well, we don't know. Okay, so we don't know how much that's worth, but what we're going to do, we're going to compare it over here. So a lot of these methods and techniques that we use fall down. What this stuff does is, and you're not going to like this, is it doesn't really kind of feed into an equation in a spreadsheet. What this does is it forces a conversation in your organization. It forces the senior management in your organization to come together and go, okay, where we are now, what is most important? And that's what your metrics should do as well. Whereas looking at it and going, what's more important, $15 million versus $10 million, that's not a conversation, that's just a comparison. And we need to get away from that. We need to get away from these business cases which are about, okay, here's a process, we produce a number and then we make a decision, to using metrics so that we can have conversations. Conversations from top to bottom, bottom to top, but also all across the organization rather than just one place. A really nice way of going about this is you kind of turn around and say, you know what, it's really hard to do all this stuff, but for a next period of time, what we're going to do is we're going to set that exchange rate. We're going to tell you that if you get 1,000 new customers, that's worth $1 million to the organization. Because now what you can do, rather than you have this success-fail business case where you have to deliver a list of features and as a result you've made 10 million, that becomes, okay, we've added 100 new customers. Well, that means that we've delivered 100,000 worth of value, or we've delivered 500 new customers, that's 500,000. And it becomes now more of a thing where you can get the feedback and can see how you're doing. So, because I want you to like this presentation, there's one last picture of a cat. I've got a dog, by the way. And I want to do one last count, because, as I say, I promised that 50% of the people would learn something. So can we just have a count? If you've got a green or a red card, if you're now aware of something you weren't aware of before, can you hold the red card? If you're now value something you hadn't before, can you hold that up, please? Oh, yep, let's see. Quick count for Chris.
Now I need the microphone. So twice as many value to aware. It's 6 to 3, 7 to 4. This last round we had a jump in red, where people are now about 30% more aware of things. So they've been exposed to new information, may not value it yet. So there may be some. So
we've got 12 people who are aware of something that weren't at the start, and we've got 9 that value something they didn't value at the start. So that's about 50% of the room.
So we're
and
about
that's how we do
3 minutes over.
Okay, so, and that's it. So
beautiful.
That's my.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate that.